It's nice to see you. It's good to see you. Hi, Randy. Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
I think you came out there and heard us the general service one
Next up, we have the Municipal Auditorium, and we are joined by Randy Rayburn, the board chair, and also Bob Sconey, the auditorium manager. And it looks like Mr. Sconey will be our spokesperson today. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the first question that we always ask is, are you satisfied with the budget?
Yes, we are pleased to receive funding to operate. Yes.
So are we done?
No, I'd like to first of all start off by introducing our commission members that are in the audience. We have John Landers, Pastor Rod Glatt, and Adrian Newman, who have all been chairpersons of the Auditorium Commission. And also I'd like to recognize Heidi Runyon, who is from the Music City Center, still comes out Nashville Convention Center for me, but she is our accountant for the auditorium. As you know, many years ago we had them share our accounting duties when we let go of our in-house accounting duties, and she does a wonderful job for us along with her staff at the Music City Center. I'd like to start off with just a brief presentation. Won't take but about 3 minutes, I promise you, but it is some important material I want to share with you. In the past fiscal years, subsidies to our budget have been steadily declining, varying from $848,000 in 2007 to $599,000 in 2011 to $40,000 in 2012. Fluctuations do occur due to the types of events that are booked and also how well they perform. It is difficult item to predict. The auditorium currently has a 4-point plan in place to address the upcoming budget year. First, we have formed a public-private partnership with the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum. This has allowed us to repurpose the exhibition hall, which is underneath the arena, with private dollar investment for the improvements made by the Hall of Fame owner, Joe Chambers. While the trade-off was a loss of revenue for some of the smaller events that were held in the exhibition hall during the build-out of the museum, we anticipate that the museum, which will bring new additional revenue to the auditorium through public admission fees. We will also share with you under our contract that the museum revenues for additional special events and concert promotions by the museum owner that he plans to host. We are excited about the new Music City Center, which in conjunction with the Convention Visitors Bureau sales department could be using the museum for hosting many new convention-related receptions and parties for the convention guests in the museum. Not only will these events generate increased revenues, but it will also provide exposure for our building to the convention planners who may find us suitable for additional convention events. The Auditorium Commission also negotiated a potentially lucrative arrangement for the museum to give us an additional 25% of share of revenue for sponsorships. So we are very excited about the museum and how it will help revitalize the auditorium. Number two, the auditorium is also currently working on a new food and beverage contract for a new vendor, which we project will result in 10% increase in concession revenue to the auditorium next year. We are also working on a new ticketing contract later this year, which we intend to negotiate to generate improved revenues. Untraditional venues such as a Symphony Hall, War Memorial Auditorium, and the Woods Amphitheater are competing for similar events. In response, our staff and Auditorium Commission worked out a more aggressive plan through a different type of rate structure to attract concerts, and we are focusing much of our energy on this endeavor. We have refurbished a major portion of our HVAC system this past year, and we are now able to control the temperature in all areas of the building, which may result in some slight increased utility costs since a lot of units were not working and are now working, and we have better control over our temperature and our comfort in our building. We are still in the process of tweaking this HVAC project, but experiencing savings in overtime because we can use the new computer-controlled system. In closing, we think this plan will enable us to continue improving our bottom line. We thank you for your service to Metro government and the auditorium and for your support of the auditorium. Glad to answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Mr. Sconey. We have a couple of in the queue. Councilmember Stein.
Thank you. I think clearly, Bob, you and your folks have a reputation for getting something done with a little less continually. My question is really for Mr. Rayburn, since he is representing the volunteer leadership of this. I know that for the longest time, I preface this by saying that we've sort of struggled for the role of the auditorium in the community. And we know from other cities that there's been sort of niches for smaller facilities like this when larger facilities have come online, and we haven't quite gotten there with this. I'm curious, as you all are thinking about this, obviously with Mr. Sconey, but clearly he's trying to get done on an everyday basis. And so you all are the folks that are really, I think, charged with thinking about the future of this. What do we know about the role of the auditorium in this community, and what do we need to know about its role in the future? And I do think this is exactly budget related, because I think it goes a long way to whether or not, you know, we can operate it.
Thank you, Ronnie. I think that my experience both in the hospitality management sector, both as a booking agent in college and when I arrived in Nashville years ago, one of the things that I've learned is that the only certainty is that markets evolve and change. And this market has evolved and changed, and we find ourselves with a 50-year-old facility that has been through several incarnations, was probably much more financially stable when the parking garage was attached to it before it was turned over to the state. It has evolved, but it's still, to quote Russ Simons, when he and Butch Spearden went through there with Joe Chambers a couple of years ago when the city began, and here comes Mr. Chambers in the hallway right now. Russ's comment, and I was not present, was, "It's so old, it's new." And I think that the facility has been well maintained in terms of maintenance, capital infrastructure, and its ability. What I do think is needed ultimately, because there needs to be an open and transparent process for the administration and the council to understand what options are out there. And my own preference, and I'm speaking only for myself, not for the board, because we haven't been in discussions of this, but I know that the council addressed this last year as I watched on Channel 3. And I also know from my own discussions with my dear departed friend, Emmett Edwards, that I think that there's some real value to the city in looking at a professional arm's length study to be funded by the council and the city in order to look at the options and determine what that marketplace is. I know a similar study was done under Mayor Bredesen in the early 1990s. The option of tearing down the building is probably not a good option, considering we've just gone into basically a 5-year lease with many multiple options with Mr. Chambers for really a repurposing of a public-private partnership. And I think it's critical to get skill sets in here who are experts in this field. You know, I've talked with a number of people, some of which feel that, you know, it could be more aggressive. But right now, Ronnie, you've got quite a competitive marketplace for these facilities, but I think there are niches both in the black box category, as it's called in the industry, more Smurf marketing, tying in with Charles and the MCC, and as well as Bridgestone. I think there's a role for it, but I think in order to get it financially functional, it has to be looked at because, once again, the capital investment, the maintenance and repairs, the day-to-day operations are good. But I think in general, government has a weakness in sales and marketing. I think there are some issues there. Bob, we don't want to get in the risky co-promoting business. We've talked about these issues. There's a lot of ways to go there, but some involve more risk. But I really think that also at the same time, I've always felt, and Emmett and I had talked about this, that perhaps this facility, as well as I used to think that the farmers market, as well as the fairgrounds, being sports entertainment venues primarily, the farmers market not as much, should fit under one authority and perhaps have administrative review by someone like the sports authority.
Well, that's a model I think Memphis used when that pyramid came online with the Mid-South Arena, that clearly that actually had a renaissance with having it under one umbrella. Well, I would encourage, I mean, I don't have any idea, and we're probably not talking about this as a current budget item, but as the course of this year goes on, I would urge your board and the administration to look at doing that kind of work, because, I mean, I think we now have some stability in the building. We have a relationship that's now important for Nashville, more important for Nashville, with the Musicians Hall of Fame being in it. But we really need to think about how we're going to do this going forward, because clearly now I think the option of the building coming down is not on the table anymore, so we've got to maximize it. And I just can't believe that looking at it and having it run in a central way with the other facilities in town wouldn't be more cost effective and ultimately more beneficial. So I encourage everybody from your board to the administration to take a long look at that in the course of this year.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Tigard.
Thank you. Randy, going back to your introduction, I want to make sure there is a difference between a booking agent and a bookie.
Don't comment.
Statute does not run. Statute does not run.
I just picked up on a few words there, and I just, okay.
One of the things they taught me at the Y Law School, Charlie, was admit nothing, deny everything, demand proof.
Bob, you talked about your heating and air conditioning issues and whatnot. This building is not part of the district energy system?
Yes, we are.
You are, so that's where the
Have
power
been,
source is.
have
Okay,
been.
just making sure. Do we have any success stories? You talked about cross-marketing and with the Music City Center coming online and bringing folks over for receptions and events in the new hall. You know, we've got 1,062,000, whatever the room nights are, and X number of conventions. Do we have success stories already that we can share, that this is already starting to occur, or is it just something we hope will occur?
Well, tours have begun. The Convention Visitors Bureau has been brought down the I call it the bow and arrow convention, but it's a archery convention. But yeah, they've come down to look at our facility amongst all facilities in town. So once they start, those types of things are probably more 3-4 months out, because once the show is booked, then the vendors that are going to that show look for places to entertain their clients, and we feel between the Musicians Hall of Fame and then still our arena, we'll be able to enjoy some. But do we have anything firm on the books? Not at this point, but we are starting to conduct tours.
Okay. Larry Schmittou was the master at Greer Stadium. You gave away free tickets just so you could sell concessions. With the expected 10% increase in concessions, are we in the process of creating events? I mean, I don't. John and I have talked about this in the past. Randy, you have any thoughts? I mean, I'm talking about high school venues where, you know, you're playing in a little gym, and now I know you're doing something with Hume Fogg and MLK. Those type of events, wrestling tournaments, volleyball. You know, to create events just with low admission price, but on the hopes that you sell more concessions.
That's actually something Bob and I have been talking about extensively over the last month. In addition to the food and beverage increases, we see more opportunities for what's called Smurf business, social as well as sports, military, educational, religious, and retiree and fraternal. Smurf is a convention industry term. And we think there's some more opportunities for black boxes, having added the curtains and the ability to have a 6,500 seat capability for concerts, but also for more corporate type events, because there are not that many facilities available that size in town for those type of groups that want to go off-site. For instance, the Marathon had their concert at the Auditorium because the Bridgestone was booked. And we think there's going to be a lot more of those capabilities, particularly with a more one-price booking opportunity, so it's a little more simple for the promoters to know what their risk is, as well as what the revenue streams are, and food and beverage in turn would be generated greater from that.
Okay, final question, Bob. 2012 actual, your income shown was 1.6 million versus a budget of 1.1, and then it dropped the following. What was the spike that we saw in 2012 income?
That was mostly from concerts and one big convention that we had. I can't recall the convention, but I know it was convention spike, and then we had
But we weren't able to talk them to
Temptations.
coming back or doing it again. That was just a 1 year.
It was a great year. Everything just fell right. And I think I mentioned when I was with you all in January, sometimes this past year, a lot of dates just couldn't materialize. We were booked, and so they had to find either reroute or go to Bridgestone.
Okay. Final question for Rich. We've eliminated the subsidy or the guarantee of the subsidy. Of course, we all know, barring some unforeseen circumstances and Randy's miracles and whatnot, what was the reasoning behind eliminating the subsidy, and what do you expect the outcome to be? What are your expectations for municipal?
I would say I would remind you that this was really a council initiative last year that we've just picked up on and incorporated into the budget this year. I think it was then Budget Chairman McGuire. His idea was to do this, and I think it makes sense from the reasons we talked about at my kickoff or the budget presentation in terms of, I don't want to say put pressure on them, but don't make them work to get whatever it is they ultimately might need. They have a fund balance. I can't remember how much it is now. They would cover some of the deficit, I think, going into this fiscal year, and I think we'll just we'll see it. We're going to it's an important facility. We can make it better, but it's an important facility, and we'll work with them over the course of the year if they need some additional money. But I think the whole idea came from the council last year. I thought it was a great idea. We adopted it, and we sort of incorporated it into the budget this year, and I would envision it going forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Council Member Moore.
Thank you, Council Lady Berry. I just a quick question. I heard in your opening speech how you were aggressively, and I think Councilman Tigard really alluded to that, how you are aggressive in your marketing efforts. And I do appreciate to hear that you're doing that. And I was looking at one of your goals where I'm reading off of that. Increase revenue and or decrease expenses to decrease subsidy. So it's good to hear that you all are really doing a lot of marketing efforts to maintain that. So I really like hearing that. So congratulations on that.
We appreciate you recognizing that. Thank you. We are working hard in that vein.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Langster.
Thank you, Councilmember Berry. Mr. Sconey and Mr. Rayburn, I want to talk to you about your day-to-day operations. I am a frequent, I make this comment every year at your budget time. I attend the OVC basketball tournaments, and I don't know how you do it. For a building that large, you really keep it very, very clean. And it's obvious to me, and other folks also made the comment. So I want to just say congratulations and give you accolades for keeping a building that size so extremely clean. And I want to thank you for your efforts. And secondly, did you host any high school graduations this year?
Yes, we hosted 3, Martin Luther King, Pearl Cone, and McGavick.
That's good. Is that higher than usual, or is it about
It's
that
about
many?
the same.
Okay. Do they have to pay a fee for the use of the?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Mr. Rayburn, your issue of sounded like maybe a consultant or a survey or a study might be done to try to incorporate the ideas that you spoke so eloquently on in your opening remarks, and I would support your effort to do that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your nice comments about the auditorium. I will share that with the staff.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Member Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I direct a question to Mr. Chambers, who's the main tenant in the building? I just want to check and make sure he's got everything he needs.
Mr. Chambers, you're welcome to come to the podium.
I know we had a less than smooth transition into your new space, and I was just wondering, do you have everything you need? Is it going according to plan? Is there anything we need to do for you?
Well, I'd like to thank all y'all, first off, for going along with the name change. I think that's going to have a big impact on the building. It's always going to be Municipal Auditorium. That's why I wanted to go there when it was first mentioned to us through the mayor's office. And I'd like to thank the mayor's office for their support on this as well. And it's a cool building. The very first concert I ever went to, and when I moved to Nashville, was there. I got butterflies walking up to the building. It looked so huge. It was twice as big as the one in Columbus, Georgia. We didn't have an exhibition hall there. It was just, flat. And that exhibition hall I attended when I was working for CBS with the Charlie Daniels jams that they would have there. And so when it was brought up to us, I was very well familiar with the building, and that, to me, was the perfect place sitting there waiting for what we could offer, which is the museum. And to answer your question, Rich was over there for an event not long ago, and they have been over backwards to help us. Bob and the staff, they all have been really
Great.
nice.
That's great. Okay. Thank you very much. And for Bob, I have a question about this subsidy. And just full disclosure, I voted against the chairman's substitute last year because I didn't like the way we were handling the enterprise funds, so I'm not actually a fan of this approach. But when you're putting your budget together, are you putting it together based on what you have, which is no subsidy? And what impact is that going to have on how much the building works? My concern here is that we would be magnifying the subsidy if we, as we did last year, the subsidies that were planned at the beginning of the budget cycle actually grew. And so I'm wondering, is it going to impact your hours open, sales time, anything that would, magnify that subsidy? Am I explaining that right?
Let's have a little conversation, make sure I understand.
Okay.
Is that the number that we put before you, the 1.3 million, is what we projected in revenues. And
right.
a lot of that number comes from our regular return business, our conventions, our religious events, and so forth. Concerts are always up and above, but I can kind of guess, this year we had about 9 or 10 concerts. So that's where we came from on this budget, and that's the way it came across to you all. Now, I don't get the message that you don't want us all to maintain the building and operate the building as best as we can. We have to keep it up. We all understand that.
Okay.
So now, where is your question?
I guess my question is, does the lack of a subsidy require you to cut back at all on sales time or hours of operation or anything that might mean the building doesn't work as hard as it would if we were to say up front, here's a $500,000 subsidy or whatever the number is?
No, I think what we're all trying to accomplish is we're trying to make the subsidy be zero at least. And I think I could come to this body and comfortably say, okay, we're going to be over that projected expense that we budgeted, but we're also going to have this projected revenue, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
You want them to be congruent.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay.
As close as we can get.
Well, with enterprise funds, it's difficult because if you don't provide the resources necessary to sell the building, to sell that asset, it often can magnify the
I don't think that's the message y'all are trying to send, and I didn't take it like that. I took it more as do the best we can do together.
Okay. Okay, great. That answers my question.
Okay.
And then last, I'll tell you that I have 3 teenagers in my house, and their preferred concert venue is Municipal Auditorium.
Really?
Because apparently, you're getting a reputation amongst the younger set for up-and-coming acts that can't get into Bridgestone. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear him say that, and I think this fall, I think they should see some more action.
That's great.
There. So
okay.
We've got,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Member Dominy.
Thank you. Mr. Sconey, I appreciate your efforts to get the budget balanced and the progress that's been made over my term here. But I had a couple questions about what was discussed in your opening statements. The HVAC upgrades that you mentioned,
yes.
How were those funded?
They were in 4%.
They're in the 4% funds, so it didn't come out of your operating budget or your reserves?
That's correct.
Okay. And how do those impact your ability to come in with a lower subsidy?
Return business. We had a lot of areas that needed to be addressed that weren't heated and cooled, and there were discomfort to not only, mostly our clients behind the scenes. Certain areas weren't being properly heated and cooled, and also to our patrons' comfort during a concert. Some things, areas would get warm because some of the units had just fallen out of, it's a 50-year-old building that needs repair. So
Right.
I think the payback will be we can control and make our everybody a lot happier, and that's the biggest payback we're going to see. We've got control in that building we haven't had in years, and it's just a delight.
I would think there's also some improvement in efficiency as well with newer equipment.
Well, when you get a unit up that hasn't been running, no, it kind of goes the other way because then you have the electricity and the usage of the DPS and that. But we think that, but there is going to be significant savings on labor in that because everything is electronically controlled now.
Okay. The other thing, you'd mentioned the Convention Visitors Bureau.
Yes.
How do y'all work with the Convention Visitors Bureau, and is there a cost associated with that?
There's no cost other than the joining of the membership, but we go to their monthly meetings that we have, their sales meeting, and we receive all their sales leads on a regular basis that come in sporadically throughout the week.
Do they assist in promoting, or do they just provide you those leads to deal with on your own?
They provide us the leads, and we take them from there, and then sometimes we'll do site inspections with them, but we work very closely with them. We're in constant contact with them.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dominy. Seeing nobody else in the queue, that will conclude our municipal auditorium budget hearing. Thank you.